Khaos. The name itself had once been a whisper of pride, a promise whispered on the solar winds to every ship leaving its starport. Khaos had been beauty incarnate, a sapphire jewel set in a crown of asteroid belts. Its oceans, once teeming with bioluminescent life, had shimmered under skies painted with nebulae. Its cities, architectural marvels sculpted from living coral, had pulsed with a vibrant, almost sentient energy. Now Khaos was a stain. Not a stain that could be washed away, not a smudge that could be erased with a rag. Khaos was a gaping wound in the fabric of reality, a silent scream echoing across light years. It wasn't just dead, it was unmade. The panoramic viewport of the Stardust Wanderer, Elara Vance's aging but reliable mercenary vessel, struggled to capture the full extent of the devastation. The data feeds, usually alight with planetary information, flickered with error codes and warnings. Atmosphere toxic. Surface temperature irregular. Gravitational anomalies extreme. Life signs minimal. Minimal. The polite understatement of a machine facing the impossible. Elara watched, her jaw tight, as the ravaged planet filled her view. It wasn't the first graveyard world she'd seen. War, cosmic indifference, and the relentless march of time had littered the galaxy with their share of shattered civilizations. But there was something different about Khaos. This felt more personal, more complete, a kind of annihilation that seeped into your very bones. The sky wasn't blue, wasn't even black. It was a churning canvas of ash gray, slashed by veins of ghostly, violet lightning. These weren't the beautiful, atmospheric electrical storms of a living world. These were jagged, angry tears in the sky, exposing the raw, chaotic energies that were tearing the planet apart from the inside. The usual itch of a highly radioactive zone, the prickling unease she felt near warp drive reactors, those were familiar, almost comforting in their predictability. This was different. This was bone-deep pain. A hollow ache that resonated in her very soul, a silent symphony of loss echoing within her. Each flash of lightning seemed to carve deeper lines into her already weathered face, etching the planet's agony onto her skin. The soundscape was just as brutal. The wind, no longer a gentle caress across lush forests, howled like a tormented beast. Rockslides, triggered by seismic instability, roared across the barren plains. Distant explosions, the death throes of collapsing structures and unstable energy sources, reverberated through the void, each boom a mournful dirge. The calms crackled with static, occasionally punctuated by garbled distress signals that cut off abruptly, leaving only a more profound and unsettling silence in their wake. "Anything, Jax?" Elara rasped, turning away from the viewport. She didn't need to see to know. The readings had been consistently bleak for the past 3 days of their approach. Jax, her ship's AI and only other crew member, responded with a synthesized sigh that sounded eerily human. "Minimal life signs remain concentrated in the planet's equatorial region, Captain. But the energy signatures are chaotic. Off the charts. I advise against planetfall." Elara ignored the advice, as she always did. Jax was a brilliant AI, but he lacked the grit, the stubborn refusal to give up that came from years spent scratching out a living in the unforgiving corners of the galaxy. She'd learned to trust his logic, but disregard his fear. "Set a course for the coordinates I sent you. And keep a tight beam on me, Jax. If anything goes sideways." "I know the drill, Captain," Jax interrupted, his voice laced with a hint of resignation. "Self-destruct sequence primed. Emergency beacon activated. And I'll be sure to write a moving eulogy on your behalf. Something about a noble spirit and a thirst for the impossible." Elara managed a wry smile. "Just get me down there, Jax. And tried to keep the eulogy short and sweet." Minutes later, the Stardust Wanderer shuddered as it pierced the toxic atmosphere. The descent was rough, the turbulence tossing the ship around like a toy. As they neared the surface, Elara could make out the fragmented remains of what had once been a thriving metropolis, skeletal skyscrapers reaching uselessly toward the poisoned sky, twisted metal canyons choked with ash, and the eerie, phosphorescent glow of strange flora struggling to survive in the irradiated soil. She brought the ship down near the edge of a colossal crater, the site of what she suspected had been the planet's central energy nexus before the cataclysm. The airlock hissed open, releasing a plume of filtered air into the toxic atmosphere. Elara Vance, clad in her battle-worn exosuit, stepped out onto the ruined surface of Khaos. The exosuit was a patchwork of salvage technology and custom modifications, a testament to her resourcefulness and her refusal to be defined by limitations. The helmet obscured her face, but the glint in her eyes betrayed the steely determination that burned within. She wasn't here for glory, wasn't here for conquest. Elara Vance was a relic raider, a hunter of lost knowledge and forgotten power. She was here for a payday. And at the heart of the crater, nestled amidst the crumbling ruins, was her prize, the reliquary of Ankara. But there was something else here, too. Something unexpected. As Elara's boots crunched across the ash-covered ground, she noticed a flicker of movement near a toppled monument. A figure, huddled in the shadows, barely visible against the desolate backdrop. Cautiously she approached, her pulse rifle raised. The figure didn't move, didn't react to her presence. Elara's visor cycled through infrared and thermal imaging, but the results were inconclusive. She stopped a few meters away, her voice amplified by her helmet's comms system. Identify yourself. State your purpose. Silence. Elara took another step, her finger tightening on the trigger. And then, the figure shifted. A wisp of silver hair caught the faint, sickly light. Elara lowered her weapon, her breath catching in her throat. It was a woman. But not like any woman she had ever seen before. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes, even in the dim light, shone with an otherworldly gold. Long, pointed ears, tipped with the same radiant silver as her hair, peeked out from beneath the tangled strands. She was clad in a torn and stained bodysuit, its sleek design hinting at a technology beyond anything Elara recognized. The most striking thing, however, wasn't her alien beauty. It was the vulnerability that radiated from her, the broken, almost ethereal aura of someone teetering on the brink of oblivion. Elara knelt, her rifle still at the ready, but her expression softening. You need help. The woman didn't respond, didn't acknowledge her. Her eyes were unfocused, her lips moving in a silent, almost hypnotic rhythm. Then she spoke, her voice a faint rasp, barely audible above the howling wind. Ankara is awakening. And that's when Elara Vance knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that this wasn't just a simple relic retrieval. This was something far more dangerous. Something that could shatter the galaxy itself. And somehow, this ethereal, wounded alien was at the center of it all. This wasn't going to be a payday. This was going to be a fight for survival. Elara Vance wasn't born into the ruins. She'd made them. Not deliberately, of course. She didn't go around detonating planets for the fun of it. But a life spent skirting the edges of galactic conflicts, chasing whispers of lost tech and forgotten empires, tended to leave a trail of wreckage in its wake. The ghost of it clung to her, a subtle scent of ozone and regret that even the best sonic showers couldn't fully erase. That scent, coupled with the cold gaze they wrote about in those ridiculous mercenary recruitment brochures, was what made her so good at her job. It wasn't about bravado or bloodlust. It was about a calculated understanding of risk, a chilling pragmatism that allowed her to weigh lives against profit margins with unnerving accuracy. It was a survival instinct honed over 1,000 close calls, etched onto her soul like the intricate circuitry woven into her exosuit. The exosuit itself was an extension of her will, a battered but reliable tool that reflected her own philosophy: adapt, improvise, survive. Patched together from salvaged components and jury-rigged modifications, it was a testament to her resourcefulness, a walking, talking embodiment of her refusal to be defined by limitations. Every scratch, every dent, every weld line told a story, a skirmish won, a betrayal weathered, a life preserved. She tapped the sidearm holstered against her thigh, feeling the familiar weight of the plasma pistol beneath her gloved fingers. Ready for anything, she muttered, though whether she was reassuring Jax or herself was unclear. Then there was Nara. Nara was different. Elara had dealt with a wide spectrum of strange individuals in her career, from bioengineered assassins with a penchant for philosophy to sentient fungi that traded in black market information. But Nara was an enigma that defied easy categorization. It was her cold beauty that first struck Elara. Not cold in the sense of callousness, but in the way a perfectly sculpted glacier is cold, stark, breathtaking, and impossibly distant. Her skin possessed an almost ethereal glow, like polished alabaster illuminated from within. It was a quality that hinted at something other, something not entirely of this reality. Her features were finely sculpted, almost androgynous, with high cheekbones, a sharp jawline, and a delicate, almost melancholic curve to her lips. But the true mystery lay in her eyes. They were gold, like molten sunlight captured in pools of liquid metal. They seemed to shift and change with the light, reflecting not just the surrounding environment, but also the echoes of a dying world. As she knelt before Nara, Elara felt a strange, unsettling sensation, as if she was peering into the abyss of a lost civilization. Those eyes held memories that were not her own, dreams that were not hers to share. It was a weight that threatened to crush her, a sorrow so profound that it almost broke her carefully constructed wall of indifference. That connection, that ethereal quality, was what marked her as an artifact engineer, a rare individual capable of deciphering and manipulating the technology of long-dead civilizations. While most scavengers were content to plunder ancient ruins for trinkets and weapons, engineers like Nara sought something far more valuable: knowledge. They were the key to unlocking the secrets of the past, the key to understanding the universe in ways modern science could only dream of. And that's what Elara wanted. Not the trinkets, not the power itself, but the knowledge of how to harness it. The knowledge to secure a future for herself, to escape the endless cycle of mercenary work and fleeting paydays. Nara held that key, and Elara wasn't about to let it slip through her fingers. It wasn't a rescue mission, despite what the bleeding hearts back at the orbital station might think. Elara Vance didn't do altruism. This was a business transaction. A high-stakes gamble with a potentially enormous payoff. She needed Nara desperately. But there was something else brewing beneath the surface, something Elara couldn't quite define. Something more than just greed or desperation. The weight of Nara's sorrow, the glimpse into that lost civilization, it had stirred something within her, a flicker of a feeling she thought she'd buried long ago. A feeling that whispered of purpose, of something beyond the cold calculations of profit and loss. "Tell me about Ankara," Elara said, her voice rough, hoping to break the unsettling silence. "What's so important about this relic?" Nara shivered, her golden eyes widening with a fear that finally seemed to break through her distant composure. "It is not a relic to be exploited. It is a prison." Elara frowned. "A prison? For what?" Nara's voice dropped to a bare whisper, barely audible above the howling wind. "For something ancient. Something that sleeps beneath Khaos. Ankara, it is the key to both its containment and its awakening." A new feeling washed over Elara, replacing the unsettling sorrow with a surge of cold, calculating excitement. This wasn't just a relic. This was something far more powerful, far more dangerous. And if she could control it... "Tell me everything," Elara said, her grip tightening on her pulse rifle. "Everything you know about Ankara. And about what lies sleeping beneath this dust." In the ravaged landscape of Khaos, under a sky slashed with ghostly lightning, a new partnership was forged. A partnership built on desperation, ambition, and the faint glimmer of a shared purpose. But little did they know, the sleeping god was about to awaken. The journey would become an alliance of survival. Nara wasn't merely unconscious. It was as if she were suspended. Not dead, not precisely alive, but caught in a liminal space, a twilight realm between being and nothingness. Her pulse, when Elara finally located it on her slender wrist, was faint, erratic, a hummingbird trapped in a vacuum. Her breathing was shallow, barely stirring the already contaminated air around them. Elara's medical scanner, a device usually reliable enough to diagnose space plague with a 5-year warranty, sputtered and flickered uselessly. It displayed a jumble of symbols, error messages, and sensor readings that made no logical sense. As if the very science it was built upon was being defied. "Damn it, Jax, what is this?" Elara demanded, her voice tight with frustration. "Readings are highly anomalous, Captain." The AI responded, his usual calm demeanor tinged with an unusual note of apprehension. "Energy signatures are present, but they're inverted. Organic and inorganic matter displaying similar readings. It's as if she's connected to the planet itself." That phrase resonated with Elara. Connected to the planet. It was a concept that both intrigued and unnerved her. She'd heard whispers, rumors among the archaeological circles, of individuals capable of tapping into the latent energies of dead worlds, of channeling the ghosts of civilizations past. She'd always dismissed them as romantic drivel, the ramblings of eccentric academics desperate for a shred of funding. But staring at Naro's impossibly pale face, the swirling gold in her eyes, Elara couldn't entirely dismiss the possibility. As Elara examined Nara more closely, she realized the woman wasn't simply breathing. She was whispering. But the words were fragmented, garbled, a discordant symphony of sounds that made no immediate sense. Elara angled her helmet closer, trying to isolate the murmurs from the howling wind. "Ankara is awakening, the serpent rises." Her head snapped up. Elara had heard those words before, not in a lecture hall or a scholarly database, but in a drunken hollow-bar brawl on a remote mining colony, screamed by a half-crazed prospector who swore he'd uncovered the truth behind Khaos's demise. She dismissed it then, a crackpot theory fueled by cheap synth ale and desperation. Now, hearing them whispered by this strange, ethereal woman, they took on a chilling new resonance. "The Grim Reaper is not to be unleashed." The whispers continued, punctuated by gasps of pain. "The Ankara, the seal, it weakens, they seek the blood." More fragmented nonsense, but Elara could detect a thread of meaning. Ankara. The name of the relic, but also a prison, a seal, a serpent rising, a death god. Her scanner, still malfunctioning, suddenly flared with a pulse of energy that threw Elara back a step. The air crackled with static, and the scent of ozone intensified. "Captain? Energy levels are spiking. I'm detecting a resonance between the subject and the ruins." Jax's voice was almost frantic now. "I am initiating emergency shielding. I strongly advise immediate evacuation." But Elara stood her ground. Her gaze flickered between Nara's haunted face and the towering silhouette of the reliquary in the distance. The monument seemed to hum with an unseen energy, its shadows shifting and swirling in a way that defied the laws of physics. It wasn't just a ruin. It was a source. And Nara, she realized, was a conduit. Elara reached out, her gloved hand hovering over Nara's face. This wasn't just about profit anymore. Something bigger was at play, something that reached beyond the cold calculations of the mercenary life. She felt a strange responsibility, a pull towards this broken, haunted woman. But a nagging doubt gnawed at her, a whisper of suspicion that she couldn't ignore. What if Jax was wrong? What if the danger wasn't external, but internal? What if Nara wasn't a victim, but a vessel? What if her vulnerability was a carefully constructed illusion, a trap designed to lure her closer? Then, one of her eyes snapped open and fixed their molten gold gaze on Elara's face. A question, chilling in its silent intensity, formed in Elara's mind. Nara wasn't just a prey, it was a bait. The wind howled louder. The violet lightning flashed brighter. And the ruins of Khaos seemed to hold their breath, waiting for Elara to make her choice. "Jax," Elara said, her voice low and steady, masking the turmoil within. "Prep the extraction rig. I have a feeling we're going to need to move fast." Because whether Nara was friend or foe, victim or architect, Elara knew one thing for sure: they were running out of time. Elara knelt, her exosets multitool whirring to life. Tiny probes extended, brushing against Nara's temples, throat, and the strange, crystalline growths that adorned her body like macabre jewelry. The scans were a mess of gibberish, alien glyphs bleeding across her visor display. Her universal translator, usually capable of deciphering even the most obscure dialects with a few seconds of calibration, remained stubbornly silent. "Jax, I need a reading." "Damn it, are those crystals reacting to the air?" Elara demanded, her voice tight with frustration. "What are they made of?" "The crystalline structures are anomalous, Captain," Jax replied, his synthesized voice laced with an unusual note of tension. "They possess a complex molecular lattice unlike anything I've encountered in the database. They appear to be drawing energy from the surrounding environment, feeding on the residual radiation." "Great," Elara muttered. "So, she's basically a living Geiger counter. Helpful. Can you at least translate what she's mumbling about?" Jax hesitated. "I am attempting to analyze her vocalizations, Captain. But her language is highly complex. My initial assessment indicates a construct of layered phonetics, incorporating tonal shifts and—" He paused again. "It also appears to incorporate what I can only describe as emotions into its structure. My systems are struggling to isolate concrete meaning." "Emotions?" Elara snorted. "Great. Sentient sorrow. Just what I need." Elara recognized that her situation had quickly devolved into a messy salvage operation. It had the potential to leave them both broke. It appeared she was now at the mercy of an advanced race's grieving session. She reached out and lightly clasped Nara by the shoulders, deciding she was tired of playing it gently. "Now, the facts." "Nara," she commanded, her voice sharp and clear. "Listen to me. You're not making any sense. We're running out of time. I need you to focus, and tell me, in words I can understand, what this Ankara curse is all about." Nara's eyes flickered, as if she were struggling to surface from a deep, turbulent sea. She inhaled sharply, a rattling sound that sent a shiver down Elara's spine. When she spoke again, her voice was slightly stronger, more coherent, but still tinged with an otherworldly sorrow. "Khaos was not always so. It was a world of light, of knowledge. But our ambition, it outstripped our wisdom." She paused, wincing as a tremor shook the ground beneath them. "We sought to harness the power of the void, the energy of creation itself. We opened a gate, and something answered." "A god?" Elara pressed, impatience clawing at her. "Something ancient. A force of annihilation. It feeds on despair, on destruction. It sought to consume everything. The Ankara, it was a defense. A final act of desperation to seal the gate, to contain the presence." "So it's a lock?" Elara asked, trying to simplify the situation in her mind. Nara shook her head, the silver hair swaying around her face like liquid moonlight. "More than that. It is a buffer. A shield. But it is weakening. As Khaos dies, the seal unravels. The force within grows stronger." "And what happens when it's gone?" Elara prompted, her hand instinctively tightening on her pulse rifle. Nara's voice dropped to a bare whisper again, her eyes filled with an ancient dread. "Then, the death god awakens. And the shadow of Khaos will spread across the stars." Elara swallowed hard, her gaze shifting to the towering silhouette of the reliquary. It no longer seemed like a treasure trove of ancient knowledge. It was a pressure cooker, a cosmic bomb waiting to detonate. She looked back at Nara, her expression hardening. "And what, precisely, do you need me for to fix this problem?" As it turned out, the truth was now very close to Elara, and that could potentially change what she expected in the following mission. It wasn't just knowledge she possessed, Elara realized, staring into the depths of Nara's golden eyes. It was a living connection. Nara wasn't just studying Khaos, she was feeling it, experiencing its death throes as if they were her own. It was in the way her fingers, long and slender, brushed across the crystalline growths on her arms, as if caressing the petrified veins of a dying organism. It was in the way her head tilted, listening to the wind that howled through the ruins, deciphering a language only she could understand. It was in the faint tremor that ran through her frame, mirroring the seismic instability that racked the planet. Elara had seen historians pore over ancient texts, meticulously dissecting the past. She'd seen archaeologists excavate long-lost cities, painstakingly piecing together the fragments of shattered lives. But she'd never seen anyone become the past, to embody it so completely, so viscerally. Nara wasn't just a descendant of an ancient civilization. She was the last echo of that civilization, a living repository of its memories, its triumphs, and its failures. It was as if the very soul of Khaos resided within her, a burden she carried with both grace and anguish. The most profound manifestation of this connection was in her eyes. They were a kaleidoscope of emotions, shifting and swirling like the nebulae that had once painted the planet's skies. For a fleeting moment, Elara thought she saw a flash of vibrant blue, the color of the oceans before they were poisoned. Then, it was replaced by a scorching orange, the inferno of the void gate as it tore open the fabric of reality. A moment later, and all that remained was the cold, desolate gold, the color of death. "It shows you things, doesn't it?" Elara asked, her voice hushed. "The planet, it shows you what happened here." Nara nodded, her face etched with pain. "I see, the cities, the faces, the light, and then, the darkness. It screams within me, Elara Vance. The hunger is unending." Elara reached out and gently touched Nara's arm, trying to offer some small measure of comfort. But as her fingers brushed against the alien skin, she felt a jolt, a sudden surge of energy that flooded her mind with fragmented images, bustling marketplaces, soaring cathedrals, crowded starports. It was a fleeting glimpse into the vibrant, chaotic life that had once thrived on Khaos, a stark contrast to the desolate landscape that surrounded them. The vision vanished as quickly as it came, leaving Elara reeling, her senses overloaded. She pulled back, shaking her head, trying to regain her composure. "Damn," Elara said. "It's like sticking your head in a Hollywood machine." But there was another quality of Nara to explore here. Though the body was frail, there had to be some kind of source power to sustain her for a longer time. Her voice did sound fragile, but for the words that slipped, were firm and confident. Elara watched Nara, and a question mark suddenly formed in her mind. Was she looking at someone who had spent the last few years in the planet, or someone who was born here and still had the strength to live? The intensity in her look, and the subtle, almost imperceptible flexing of a muscle that had long lost use had to reveal that Nara had something more than sorrow, and pain and longing. She had control and power, however buried, however dormant. Elara wasn't buying that the cold beauty was a facade and had the mind to be an equally calculating decision. It made Elara consider that the key to the plan was not only in her head but her existence. And the price for it was to test who Elara was. Could she see through what's on the surface? Or could she see to what lies beneath? And what did she plan to do with it? The only constant in life is balance. You cannot hold death for too long or there is no life, and with you, it seems you cannot value your life enough, or there is little death to appreciate. I may be weak now, but are you so blind to dismiss all that I have no value, only because of my appearance? So, what is your plan? Nara remarked. Her hand clutched tightly to the earth, a slight tremor in her grip. This wasn't just about a transaction. This was about something deeper, something more essential. It gave Elara the chills to think about just then. Was Nara the prey, the bait, or the thing that she really wanted? With that, did the balance tilt? Who was using who? What did this alliance even mean in the far future? As long as Khaos has the promise of something bigger, something greater, than just the cold, desolate gold, the color of death, then so would that be. The wind howled a mournful counterpoint to Nara's chilling revelation, the poisoned air tasting like burned metal and forgotten promises. Elara ran a diagnostics check on her pulse rifle, her fingers moving with the practiced ease of someone who had spent far too long relying on weaponry for survival. Trust? Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, not in this galaxy, not in her line of work. Especially not now. Let's get something straight, Elara said, her voice hard, devoid of the empathy she felt, or pretended to. I'm here for the reliquary. For its tech, its power, whatever it's worth on the open market. You say it's a prison? Great. I'll dismantle the bars and sell them to the highest bidder. Nara's golden eyes flickered with a flicker of something. Disgust? Pity? Elara couldn't quite decipher it, and frankly, didn't care. You cannot comprehend the danger. If awakened, this force will bring destruction, Nara stated with a calm expression. It was all the rage. It was the only reason why she could go on and trust that something could happen. Oh, I get the danger, Elara countered, her gaze narrowing. Believe me, I've stared into the abyss more times than I care to remember. And you're telling me this whole planet became that abyss because someone got greedy? So, what's the play? The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Elara knew she was being blunt, even callous. But she needed to establish the boundaries, to make it clear that this was a transaction, not a friendship. Sympathy and sentimentality were liabilities in this business, luxuries she couldn't afford to carry. We have a mutual need. That means our plan should come into place accordingly, Nara stated, with Elara wondering where did the woman got all that wisdom from and all that power she couldn't see. Fine, but I know I am carrying all you in order to get all this done, she said sternly. And your plan to stop this thing depends on us helping each other? So you must comply with what I know will get you out of this place. What do you have for me and I let you live? I am the only one who can reseal the gate, Nara said, her voice regaining its earlier conviction. Only blood of my line, and only a descendant of the last royal ruler can perform the ritual. Then you have to trust me to what comes next, and so I can trust that you are not that greedy to destroy my planet. Royal blood, huh? That explains the dramatic eyes. Elara smirked, glancing over Nara's crystalline adornments. What a joke it was. All of a sudden she had to work with the queen. All right, your highness. Assuming I buy this whole royal line of buldash, Elara said, pausing after seeing Nara frown. Look, the point is your life depends on me protecting you to begin with, to reseal this gate, and then hopefully make it out of here with the shiny technology everyone wants. Assuming you succeed, Nara added, with a hint of doubt. You are going to have to believe that I can do what must be done. No holding me back, no doubting me, do you get the gist? So, basically, I keep you alive and safe until we reach the altar, you wave your magic hands, and everything goes back to normal? Elara clarified, her skepticism barely concealed. She was never one to believe in prophecies and fairy tales. The basics, but in the end I cannot ensure you get what you want, that will all depend on how you will see things further, replied Nara. Only then I can trust the person who has done most of the killing, has the mind to heal, but has to decide either to get the highest amount of profit, or the right amount of power. Elara scoffed. Power, huh? You think I'm after the power? It is a human trait, Captain. The desire to possess it, even if you do not know what it will do for you or not. Is power why are you doing this, or are you simply interested in the material compensation you asked for earlier? And what about you? Countered Elara, with a raised brow. You're not after power? Sealing away a death god sounds like a pretty powerful act to me. Nara's expression turned somber. I do not seek power, Elara Vance. I seek salvation. For my people, for my world. And if I must wield power to achieve it, then so be it. But I know and trust there are other ways you must know. So, we have a deal? Elara extended her hand, her callous fingers brushing against Nara's smooth skin. It felt strangely electric, as if the very energy of Khaos was coursing through her veins. Nara hesitated for a moment, her eyes searching Elara's face. I will lead you to the gate, but I trust your intentions are going to be for the best. What happens with the key is up to you. Do we have a deal or not? Elara nodded slowly. We have a deal. As their hands met, a surge of energy passed between them. It was a pact sealed not with trust, but with necessity. A bargain forged in the ashes of a dying world, a deal where both sides were gambling with everything they had to lose. The price of success? The fate of the galaxy itself. But now a series of concerns arised. Well, it's up to me, but what about you? It means I am leading you to your sacrifice, and there must be something more that can happen, right? Nara stared at her as if she was testing her, and nodded that as she got all the help she needed, Nara had to take control. Then, the time for chatter was up. With the contract in place, one was with hope and another was with greed, their journey started, or it was about to, depending on what dangers were out there. The entrance to the reliquary yawned before them, a gaping maw in the side of the crater. It wasn't a door, not even a broken one. It was simply a void, a tear in the fabric of reality that seemed to suck in the light around it. Elara activated her helmet lamp, the beam cutting a feeble swathe through the oppressive darkness. The air inside was thick, heavy with the stench of decay and the acrid tang of ozone. It clung to the back of her throat, a bitter reminder of the poisonous nature of Khaos. Elara clicked on her helmet's rebreather, the filtered air a small comfort against the overwhelming stench. "Stay close," she said, her voice echoing slightly in the confined space. She adjusted the settings on her pulse rifle, switching to a wider, less lethal dispersal pattern. If the rumors were true, and this place was guarded by something mechanical, she'd rather disable it than destroy it outright. Knowledge, after all, was power. And destruction would mean the loss of that knowledge. Nara, despite her earlier show of bravado, moved with an almost hesitant grace, her golden eyes darting nervously across the crumbling walls. She ran a gloved hand along the cold, metallic surface, muttering words that Elara couldn't quite decipher. A prayer? A lament? A command? They entered a long, descending corridor, the floor sloping sharply downwards. Every step sent a cascade of dust and debris tumbling into the darkness below. The walls were lined with panels of intricately carved metal, their surfaces blackened and corroded by time and radiation. "These are containment fields," Nara said, her voice barely a whisper. "They were designed to regulate the flow of energy, to keep the power of the relic contained." "Were?" Elara raised an eyebrow, her tone questioning. "They have failed," Nara replied grimly. Elara didn't need confirmation. The evidence was all around them. Cracks spiderwebbed across the panels, glowing with an eerie, violet light. The air vibrated with a barely perceptible hum, a low-frequency thrumming that resonated deep within her chest, making her teeth ache. As they moved deeper into the ruins, the corridor narrowed, the walls pressing in on them like the jaws of a steel beast. Elara felt a growing sense of claustrophobia, a primal fear that the tunnel would collapse around them, burying them alive beneath tons of rubble. And then there were the sounds. Not the wind, not the rock slides. These were mechanical noises, the grinding of gears, the hissing of steam, the rhythmic click-clack of something moving. The sounds were faint, distant, but they were undeniably there, lurking just beyond the reach of her senses. "What is that?" Elara asked, her hand tightening on her pulse rifle. Nara paused, her head tilted slightly to one side. "Guardians," she whispered. "Remnants of our past. They were built to protect this place. But they have been corrupted. Twisted." The corridor opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in the darkness above. Before her stood a towering wall, covered in intricate murals that pulsed with a faint, ethereal light. Elara stopped in her tracks, momentarily stunned by the sheer scale and artistry of the display. The murals depicted a civilization in its prime, a society of sleek, graceful beings who seemed to effortlessly blend technology and nature. They soared through the skies in elegant, winged craft, sculpted living cities from coral and crystal, and harnessed the energy of the stars with breathtaking ease. It was a vision of utopia, a glimpse into a world of unimaginable beauty and power. But then, the murals shifted, the idyllic scenes dissolving into images of chaos and destruction. The winged craft plunged from the sky, cities crumbled into dust, and the energy of the stars turned into a destructive force that consumed everything in its path. The final mural depicted a towering, skeletal figure, wreathed in shadows and lightning. A death god, rising from the depths of a dying planet. "The story of Khaos," Nara said, her voice heavy with sorrow. "The story of our ambition, and our fall." Elara found herself strangely moved by the images, by the tragic tale that unfolded before her. It was a stark reminder of the fragility of even the most advanced civilizations, of the dangers of unchecked ambition, and of the devastating consequences of playing with forces beyond comprehension. Then, the ground beneath her feet vibrated, a low rumble that snapped her back to reality. "They are coming," Nara whispered, her golden eyes widening. Elara turned, her pulse rifle raised. The shadows in the chamber seemed to deepen, to coalesce into shapes, into forms. And then, they emerged, mechanical monstrosities, twisted and corrupted by the touch of the Death God. Some were hulking, bipedal constructs, their metallic limbs adorned with jagged blades and energy cannons. Others were serpentine coils of gears and cables, their multifaceted eyes glowing with malevolent intent. And still others were winged monstrosities, their once elegant frames now contorted into grotesque parodies of flight. The air filled with the screeching of metal on metal, the crackling of energy weapons, and the guttural growls of corrupted machinery. The guardians of Ankara had awakened, and they were ready to defend their prison with lethal force. Elara tightened her grip on her rifle, her senses on high alert. Time for action. "Looks like your civilization's got some serious security issues, Nara," she quipped, a familiar grin spreading across her face. "Let's see if we can help them with a little systems upgrade." And with that, Elara Vance, the mercenary with a scent for wreckage, prepared to face the horrors of Khaos, the guardians of the Death God, and the burden of a civilization's sins. It was time for her to unlock the relic, or what to make of it all, and there was something in Nara, and to do that, she'd need to get her hands dirty. The relentless onslaught of the corrupted guardians forced them deeper into the ruins, a brutal, desperate retreat that left trails of scorched metal and sparking circuits in their wake. Elara moved with a practiced efficiency, her pulse rifle spitting bursts of plasma that disabled the closest threats, buying them precious seconds. Nara, surprisingly agile despite her weakened state, navigated the treacherous terrain, her golden eyes darting over the crumbling structures, guiding them through a labyrinth of hidden passages and dead ends. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of close calls and near misses, they reached their destination, a vast chamber, the heart of the reliquary. The air here thrummed with raw, untamed energy, the violet glow intensified to a blinding intensity. In the center of the room, a colossal structure loomed, the energy altar, as Nara called it. It wasn't an altar in any traditional sense. It was a massive, crystalline matrix, pulsating with light and power, its intricate lattice humming with a symphony of barely perceptible frequencies. "This is it," Nara said, her voice barely audible above the cacophony of the energy field. "This is where the seal must be renewed." Elara surveyed the structure, her analytical mind struggling to comprehend its alien design. She had seen technology beyond human understanding before, but this was different. This wasn't just advanced technology. It was something else. Something bordering on magic. "All right, engineer," Elara said, turning back to Nara. "Explain this to me. How does it work? What do we need to do?" Nara approached the crystalline matrix, her hand outstretched, trembling slightly. "The Ankara, it resonates with royal blood. Only someone of my lineage can activate the seal. I must offer myself to the artifact, and hope it will listen." Elara frowned, her instincts screaming a warning. "Offer yourself? What does that mean, exactly? Are you saying this is a one-way ticket?" Nara turned, her golden eyes meeting Elara's gaze. And in that moment, Elara understood. There was a depth of conviction in her eyes, a quiet acceptance of a predetermined fate. A darkness lurked. "Nara, you never wanted to be saved, didn't you? If the seal requires my death, then so be it. The fate of countless worlds rests on this moment. I would die without a moment of hesitation," Nara declared with a look that she seemed to have the peace with the whole situation. "Bullshit," Elara said, gritting her teeth. "So this is it, aren't you? That's what she said what has to happen for this plan to be done," Elara accused, her voice shaking as if she had been betrayed. "You said you wanted me to bring you here, but no, you were here to die." Nara stood up and walked towards to the device, the last steps with an echo of a long path, a path that for what reason was made to stop there. She couldn't hear Elara for 1 minute. That was when Elara realized it. There was a feeling like betrayal. She wanted the profit, but what Nara knew was the key. Elara's gaze went back to hers, was not for her not being the one deciding things, but in general, all the weight that they carried for just an objective. What if I do what is expected of me? So I die in this place and all ends up in the hands of some bad joke? There was so much at stake that it only had one way, trusting someone to believe, the hard way. There was always a moment where every bet went in, now or never, all or nothing. She stared into Nara's eyes and it made it click at her. The time of the question mark ended. The reason why Elara has seen herself as a reluctant hero, but this was not going to be another sad ending in the cards. She would gamble her life as well, as to be the one deciding what the future would take. That, and she couldn't die for a random engineer. Stop, Nara! Don't do it! Elara blurted, taking a step forward, her hand outstretched. She could see a spark of surprise in Nara's eyes, as if her words came from nowhere near to her heart. There's got to be another way. The world was against them, and Elara would give all the forces in the world the reason to be against, even if it took her to a point of no return. Her decision was there. Elara's words hung in the air, swallowed by a sudden, ear-splitting crack. Nara, ignoring her plea, placed her hand upon the crystalline matrix. The structure erupted in a blinding flare of violet light, bathing the chamber in an unearthly glow. A wave of energy pulsed outward, knocking Elara off her feet. She slammed against the crumbling wall, her senses reeling. The air crackled and thrummed, thick with the scent of ozone and something else, something ancient, something indescribably alien. The world seemed to shift and warp around her, the familiar laws of physics bending and breaking. Nara! Elara screamed, scrambling to her feet. Nara stood before the energy altar, her body illuminated by the violet glow. Her expression was serene, almost beatific. But the light pouring from the matrix was not healing, not life-giving. It was a sacrifice. An offering to a force beyond comprehension. Then, the ground began to shake. Not a gentle tremor, but a violent, earth-shattering convulsion that threatened to tear the chamber apart. Chunks of the ceiling collapsed, sending showers of dust and debris raining down around them. The crystalline matrix pulsed faster, its violet light intensifying, feeding something growing deep beneath the surface. What have you done? Elara asked, her voice laced with fear. Nara turned to her, a single tear tracing a path down her pale cheek. I have done what I must. Now you must do what you must. Before Elara could respond, the chamber was thrown into chaos. The mechanical monstrosities that had guarded the ruins suddenly lurched into motion, their movements jerky and erratic. The code within their circuits had shifted, twisted by the power that was unleashed. They began to attack each other, tearing and rending at their own kind with savage ferocity. Blades clashed against metal, energy weapons discharged in wild, uncontrolled bursts, painting the chamber with streaks of crimson plasma. The air filled with the sounds of mechanical carnage, the grinding of gears, the snapping of cables, the screech of tearing metal. This, Elara realized with a grim certainty, was the awakening Nara had warned them about. The force that had slumbered beneath Khaos was stirring, corrupting everything in its path. Jax's voice crackled in her ear, barely audible above the pandemonium. Captain, readings are off the charts. The gravitational field is fluctuating wildly. I am detecting massive energy surges originating from the planet's core. Elara struggled to maintain her balance, her boots slipping on the debris-strewn floor. Her analytical mind, usually so precise and calculating, was struggling to make sense of the chaos unfolding around her. She knew it was time to choose. Run. It was the sensible option, the pragmatic one. Cut her losses, leave Nara to her fate, and get the hell out of Khaos before it was too late. Survival had always been her primary directive, and there was nothing to be gained from staying. Only death. But as she looked at Nara, standing serenely before the energy altar, her face illuminated by the violet glow, Elara felt a flicker of something else within her, a feeling she couldn't quite ignore. A sense of responsibility. She couldn't just abandon her, not when the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The relic wasn't just a prize. It was a responsibility. And whatever force was awakening on Khaos, it needed to be stopped. It was that moment Elara realized she wouldn't just stand as a comic relief. It was the test of what was in her heart, something pure that was not meant to be broken like she thought. She gripped her pulse rifle tighter, her gaze hardening with resolve. "Jax," she said, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the noise of the chaos. "Belay that order. No extraction. I'm going to need you to reroute all available power to my suit's energy shields and weapon systems." "I'm staying." Jax hesitated, his synthesized voice laced with doubt. "Captain, that is highly illogical. The chances of survival are—" "I know the odds, Jax," Elara snapped. "Just do it." She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. This wasn't about profit, wasn't about glory. It was about something far more important. It was about making a choice, about standing against the tide of darkness, even if it meant facing certain death. This wasn't going to be easy. This wasn't going to be pretty. But Elara Vance, the mercenary with the scent of wreckage, was ready to face the abyss once more. It was time to fight. "Show time," Elara muttered, slamming her fist against the activation rune on her exosuit's gauntlet. The suit flared to life, the energy shield shimmering into existence, deflecting a stray blast of plasma that sizzled harmlessly against the barrier. The heads-up display flashed a series of diagnostics, confirming weapon systems were online and power reserves were at maximum. But that wouldn't be enough. The Guardians, now completely consumed by the will of the awakening entity, surged towards her, a horde of metal and malice driven by a single, all-consuming directive: protect the reliquary. Forget the order of things, Elara and Nara were now the enemy. The first wave was comprised of hulking, bipedal constructs, their energy cannons spitting bolts of searing energy. Elara ducked behind a crumbling pillar, the plasma blasts impacting against the stone with a deafening roar, sending shards of debris flying through the air. They were strong but simple. The moment felt as if they were only getting closer to an eternal sleep, but to have her own, the only way was to make sure that that would never happen. She strafed out from behind the pillar and ripped off a quick-fire burst of plasma bolts towards the center of mass of the monsters, and that was what kept the monster at a slow pace than before. The precision was something learned through all the fighting. They were not easy, and this was not the time to remember. The next was that they kept rushing towards her one last time, to what she aimed towards each one, and they took several stumbles but could not make the end. "Elara!" Nara's voice echoed urgently through the calms. "The ritual takes time. You must buy me as much time as possible." "Time is money, sweetheart," Elara replied with a grim smile, switching her pulse rifle to full auto. "And right now, time is all we've got." The battle erupted around her, a chaotic ballet of energy and metal. Elara moved with a speed and precision that belied her years, her exosuit enhancing her already considerable combat skills to superhuman levels. She weaved between the lumbering Guardians, dodging their clumsy attacks, and delivering pinpoint bursts of plasma that crippled their systems and sent them crashing to the ground. But for all the skill, numbers, and the will to do something were an issue, she needed something to act with a power she didn't know, and that the more she did, the more it was something. This had to stop. One of the Serpentine Guardians, a coil of gears and cables, slithered through the chaos, its multifaceted eyes locking onto Elara's position. It unleashed a barrage of energy spikes that tore through her shields, leaving burn marks searing across her exosuit. Elara staggered back, gritting her teeth against the pain. As her suit came down, she knew she was in over her head. Then a sudden inspiration hit her. All that tech in the city? It might not all be useful for the world and civilization, but was enough to be repurposed and take some advantage of. She dived between two constructs and fired a pulse. It was more than enough to throw those constructs far back, while she used the parts to build something better, and as if the power was still thrumming to this day, that was the best idea to have ever been and for everyone around. But it wasn't enough. As more and more Guardians closed in, their metallic limbs poised to strike. Elara knew she couldn't hold them off forever, The strength that Nara had and the technology that Khaos had were fading away. Elara, the seal! Nara's voice came through, almost a cry from it, and came to a realization. It's your time to show the world of what stuff you're made from, Nara. I won't keep them alive. I may not be the strongest of heart, but it's never going to be to waste on you if I need to throw my life to get back your people to your life. The words came out, but she doubted that it would mean nothing. It's not to say or not to feel that the life meant nothing to her, because that's not it. That was what the mercenaries were for. Her purpose here wasn't the relics or the power, it was to leave the past of greed back behind. Then, as quickly as everything was there, she released herself into her purpose. She charged against what remained of the constructs. And that was what was. Elara was now giving her everything for all. And that was the moment where it was finally going to start. The power of such action rippled through the matrix with the power of her sacrifice. Elara saw something change in Nara. She could feel it, like a rush of wind just before a storm, before the power was awakened. The wind was now with Nara. The touch was with Nara. The fire was now with Nara. It could be then. Nara's eyes flared with an unearthly light, and a surge of power erupted from her, engulfing the crystalline matrix in a blinding wave of pure energy. The air crackled, the ground trembled, and the entire reliquary thrummed with the force of creation itself. It was time to face the past, embrace the future, and what was to come. Would Nara save herself, as Elara seemed to point her? Or would the weight of Khaos be too much to resist? The violet energy cascaded outward, sweeping through the chamber, silencing the corrupted guardians with an abrupt finality. They crumbled like puppets with their strings cut, their metallic limbs collapsing in inert heaps. The grinding of gears, the crackling of energy, the symphony of destruction, it all ceased, leaving behind an unnerving silence. Then, the shaking stopped. The tremors subsided. The oppressive weight that had been crushing Elara's chest began to lift. She gasped for air, her lungs burning, her body trembling with exhaustion. She lay amidst the wreckage, her exosuit sparking and smoking, feeling as if every bone in her body had been shattered and reassembled. Slowly, with agonizing effort, she pushed herself to her feet. Her vision swam, the chamber still bathed in an eerie, residual glow. She spotted Nara near the energy altar. Nara stood motionless, her hands still resting on the crystalline matrix. The violet light had dimmed, leaving her skin pale and luminous. Her golden eyes were closed, her expression serene, almost otherworldly. For a terrifying moment, Elara feared the ritual had taken its toll, that she had traded one kind of death for another. Nara? Elara croaked, her voice raw and strained. Nara's eyes flickered open, a spark of life returning to their depths. She took a deep breath, a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. The crystalline matrix hummed softly beneath her touch, as if acknowledging her presence. "It is done," she whispered, her voice stronger now, imbued with a newfound sense of peace. "The gate is sealed. The awakening is averted." Elara let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Relief washed over her, a wave so intense that it almost buckled her knees. She stumbled towards Nara, her steps unsteady on the debris-strewn floor. "Are you okay?" Elara asked, her hand reaching out, hesitating before making contact. She wasn't sure if Nara was real or still just some kind of construct or ghost. Nara simply gave Elara a glance. "I am as I was before, still Nara." She laughed, and then a deep cough took the joy from her face. "The important thing is, we did it for your world. This may just be some crazy things happening to me, but for what has happened to this one, it's everything." Nara did something unexpected, and as much as Elara hated surprises, it would just be as expected that the world wasn't at her heel. She said, "You don't belong here, but here you did what could not be done. Why are you just chasing money instead of your own truth? Don't you think is the most dangerous thing of all?" The comment struck into Elara's mind because, as Nara said, that was just a question, and what has come out would be the most powerful fact to consider for her survival. And something, said and unsaid, was that now and here she had a second chance at life. Elara stared at her. You can have those thoughts running along, but her work had always been what drove her, so as they made their escape, she had an answer that came to the most inner parts of herself. Maybe so. But what is it for you? Because I can see this in you. The both laughed. At the sky with no God, a world with ghosts, for a future where they were the hope to keep it together whatever that thing meant. What were they going to do now that a plan, and more or less they made it? They moved back to a crater, as the light shone. A new dawn. Always remember, only in death comes new light, Elara Vance. Elara gave a look with a silent cry. The time was to get out of that place. Elara and Nara stood silhouetted against the horizon, the ruins of Khaos stretching out behind them like a monument to shattered dreams. The violet lightning had faded, leaving the sky a bruised and battered gray. But a sliver of pale light had begun to creep over the horizon, hinting at the possibility of a new dawn. There, Elara said, pointing towards a faint shimmer in the distance. Looks like someone finally answered our call. The approaching vessel, a sleek, black cruiser, sliced through the atmosphere with a silent grace. Its design was unfamiliar to Elara, not human, not Krell, not anything she recognized from the charted sectors. It was elegant, almost organic, with curves that seemed to flow and shift like water. They are different, Nara said, her golden eyes narrowed as she studied the approaching ship. Not like anything I have seen before. Different how? Elara asked, her hand instinctively reaching for her pulse rifle. One could never be too careful. Nara shook her head, her expression unreadable. I cannot explain. It is a feeling. As if they are both old and new. As the ship drew closer, its alien features became more apparent. It had no visible weapons, no obvious defensive systems. Instead, its surface seemed to shimmer with a subtle, almost imperceptible energy field. The ship's presence made Elara's instruments go mad. The thought made her feel very alert. And to see more with the next one. They met, then gave a sign of, "Let's make it," then stood in front of it for many seconds that felt longer, with the sound of the door echoing all over the land. Well, there are your friends, Elara said, breaking the silence. Ready to find out what kind of reception we are about to get? As they looked on and the ship came closer, there was Nara, but in her face, the change was real. Now it wasn't pain, now it wasn't suffering. It was hope, a spark in her voice that almost reminded her of better days. But after having done that, all she had to do was follow through as a ghost. But as Cole, on the other hand, was as clear as the water. Let's see if this trip was about to go or if I should really think about that retirement. And all for something I have never intended to be done, and yet I have seen myself do. Elara was the spark, Nara was the path. Then, looking from afar to her savior, Nara then held his shoulder and winked for just a millisecond and said, with her breath again, I swear I am going to protect you from what's to come, or my name is not Nara. The airlock hissed open, a bright beam of light spilling out into the desolate landscape. Two figures emerged, silhouettes against the blinding light. Shall we? Elara said, turning to Nara with a wry smile. Nara nodded, her golden eyes gleaming with a newfound resolve. Together. As they walked towards the ship, Elara couldn't help but steal a glance back at the ruins of Khaos. The violet lightning had faded, the wind had calmed, and a sliver of pale light was now beginning to illuminate the horizon. It was a small, fragile glimmer of hope in a world of ashes. But it was there, burning bright, fueled by the unlikely alliance of a cynical mercenary and a haunted engineer. The road ahead would be long and arduous, fraught with danger and uncertainty. But as they stepped onto the alien ship, bound for the stars, Elara knew that they were ready. They each knew that whatever happened to them, if they lived, if they died, nothing would be as they were before. The ramp of the alien cruiser hummed as it extended, a bridge between the ruins of the past and the unknown potential of the future. The metal was cool to the touch, almost alive, resonating with the same subtle energy that pulsed through Nara herself. Elara paused, her gaze sweeping over the desolate landscape one last time. The wreckage of Khaos stretched out behind them, a bleak testament to the destructive power of ambition and the enduring scars of loss. She knew they were leaving behind more than just a dying planet. They were leaving behind ghosts, echoes of a civilization that would forever haunt their steps. But she also knew they were carrying something else with them, something far more important, a spark. A tiny, fragile flame of hope ignited in the face of unimaginable darkness. Nara stood beside her, her golden eyes reflecting the alien light of the ship. She had removed her helmet, revealing the full extent of her ethereal beauty, her silver hair cascading down her shoulders like liquid moonlight. But beneath the ethereal grace, Elara saw a newfound resolve, a steely determination that mirrored her own. "We cannot allow this to happen again," Nara said, her voice firm, devoid of the sorrow that had haunted it before. "What we have seen here, the hunger that lurks beneath Khaos, it must be stopped. We are the last ones that are now left." Elara nodded, her gaze hardening with purpose. "Then we stop it. Whatever it takes." She knew in that moment that her life wasn't one, but they now had two. Nara and her touched shoulders, as Nara finished with what she had to propose. They needed to do something that was more than their reach. "To what's broken and doesn't have to repeat itself," both proclaimed. The two looked and began to turn, taking his in her hand. Those were their new worlds. They would face the dark side, and the bright day would never be the same for a long of their adventures. As they stepped onto the ramp, leaving the ashen plains of Khaos behind them, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that their journey had just begun. They had survived, they had made an alliance, and had a great purpose to face, and that had made them strong and more powerful than ever before. But as to see, both were a power. A relic that would last forever.